So because this is a long training, we'll just jump straight into the overview. All right, so as far as the overview, we just want to talk about why we collect the Fall 2 data, what's the purpose, and like most things in CalPADS, legislation drives the collection of the data for accountability. For Fall 1, it's accountability and funding. So things that the data influences are our school accountability report cards. It's mandated by the Every Student Succeeds Act to identify inexperienced teachers. The U.S. Department of Civil Rights, uh, they monitor LEAs to make sure that we meet our obligations to English learners. And then the CTC performs CalSAS monitoring with Fall 2 data. And then we have uh, Carl Perkins with our PSTS submission. And so, there's several different factors and reasons and why we collect this data. Those are just a few of the reasons. All right, so who's involved in the data collection? So, of course, it starts with you, the CalPAD data coordinator. And then you will have to have relationships and be able to ascertain information from your school site staff, perhaps counselors and administrators, your human resources staff, right? You're going to have to find out information about your staff members. That typically starts at human resources, and human resources typically doesn't interact with student information systems or CalPADs. So you're going to have to be the point of contact and try to get whatever information you need from them, whatever's missing. And then you have other staff that's very important. You have your program staff, right? Your EL coordinators. You have your curriculum instruction staff who help identify the credentialed teachers and assign them to the appropriate classes. You have your special education staff who will know the details about the special education classes and services, so on and so forth. So it's although we put more emphasis on Fall 1 because of the funding implications, you may have to interact with more staff members at your LEA than you did in Fall 1. This may require more of a team approach. So let's review some key dates. First thing first is all the data that's being reported in Fall 2, all the data that we're going to certify on the deadline goes back and is reflective of October 2nd, right? So all the staff, it's what they were doing on October 2nd, the classes they were assigned to, if they're teachers, the districts or the school that they were teaching at within the district on October 2nd, if there was any movement, things of that nature. Uh, Everything, just like Fall 1, goes back to October 2nd. That's why it's called Fall 2, even though we're in the dead of winter during the bulk of the submission period. The snapshots begin on December 17th, so many of you have already started. Uh, and then February 7th, right, about a month from now, roughly, we would hope that everyone has 0 errors. That's 3 weeks before this deadline. Well, and the final deadline is February 28th. There will be no amendment period. I think for the past 2 years, we haven't had any extension or amendment period, and most LEAs are proficient. So if you're newer and you need help, this will be the first time I reference to you all that you have a CSIS monitor. Your monitor should have sent you some kind of communication for Fall 1 and should, if they haven't already, communicated for Fall 2. So look in your inbox. Somebody from CSIS should be harassing you. If you have any questions, you can, in addition to the service desk, you can talk to your CSIS monitors. We're here to help and support. All right, so we have the Fall 2 toolkit and we have an image here, but I'm going to drag my Chrome web browser over and show you some of the resources. So we'll start with the CalPAD system documentation page. All right, we should all be familiar with this. Um, We have the current CFS documents. The one I want to point out is the valid code combinations. Um, there's a chance that we haven't used it for fall one, and if you're new, you're unfamiliar with it. Have it here. It looks like this. It's an Excel spreadsheet, several tabs at the bottom. Um, yesterday we did data population training for fall two, so I have moved to a specific tab. This is one that you would use a lot, the course group master combos tab. It has every state course code here. And if you're going to use this document, the first thing for every tab, every one of these sections down here is scroll all the way to the right. You have the scroll bar and you see this last year effective column. We want to only find the current codes. So we don't want an effective end date. So these are all the current codes for state course codes, for example, and you can scroll through here, right? And then one of the reasons why this tab is so valuable for fall two, you can see the different information. You have the state course code, the name, different elements of the course, the grade high, the highest grade the code is valid for, the lowest grade, so on and so forth. So that's a tab that you will be referencing. It has non-classroom based job assignments. It has other elements that we might reference back to during this training about the course. So become familiar with the valid code combinations. It's important for fall two, in addition to the file specification, the CalPADS code sets. The next resource, the most important resource, is always the CalPADS user manual. And that's because it's updated by our very own Kyron all the time. Um, I spell CalPADS with the K in honor of Kyron. He gives more attention to the user manual than he does his own children. They're very jealous. So here's the Fall 2 roadmap. So if you're new, you can start here. And this is a guide that will help you step by step complete the Fall 2 submission. You can download the checklist and it will walk you through common tasks that every LEA performs to ensure that they submit all the data. And then there's just a collection of information and resources that Kyron has personally collected and published. And it makes it easy because the consolidation of this information saves you a lot of time. There's a single place you can go for answers. And so the Fall 2 roadmap is here, in addition to all the other functionality, the CalPADS user manual. And of course, if you're troubleshooting, you can always download the most updated Excel document of the error list, but you can also look for any error that you have. And then last but not least, this the quick search functionality. If you have an error, you can always search it, go find the description, look at the fields of validation. Um, and sometimes if we have a video for it, it would be down at the bottom and it'll be a demonstration of troubleshooting the error. So the user manual is a great resource. And then last but not least, on my quick resources checklist or the toolkit for today, the CTC has CalSAS information. And so if you don't have it bookmarked, if you go to this website, it's difficult to find, right? So when I Google it, I just type in CalSAS information, or I guess maybe in the search you could type in CalSAS if you come here. But navigating this website is pretty difficult. So CalSAS information. And then from here, there's a lot of information about the CalSAS monitoring, talks about determinations and exceptions. One of the resources we use a lot are the appropriate credential for those staff members. And so appropriate credentials for state course codes will go here. And if you could type in the state course code, or you could type in the name. Let's just do college, all the college credit courses, and you will see sometimes there are not necessarily authorizations for college courses because they're not taught at the secondary level. Sometimes there are authorizations. So, that's how you would use it. If you find a course, you type in, algebra, for example, it give you the credentials, authorizations that are required to teach those courses. And they also have this for non-classroom based assignments. So those are probably the most used resources in the toolkit. And so let's talk about the submission or the data collection. We have the staff demographic file, which is the SDM is the record type or the acronym for staff demographic. This is used to report teachers of records, identify the date of employment or the end date for staff no longer to be employed. Additionally, Kyron will talk about is we use the end date for staff that should not be reported. And then all staff that are serving certificated positions should be included in the staff demographic that were active on census day. Then you have the staff assignment or the SAS, the acronym is SASS, and that's where you would submit FTE job classifications and non-classroom based job assignments. Those are followed with this course and the student course section records, the CRSE and the SESE. This is where we describe the curriculum and the course content through the course record, different attributes, and then additionally, we enroll those students and show that the instruction they are receiving by submitting student course section enrollment records. And then the last file is the post-secondary status file, the PSTS. And this is the survey result for your CTE completers that left the prior academic year. And it is optional. If you have California Partnership Academies, schools, or courses within your LEA, you can submit their completer results as well if you surveyed them. So just as that last slide was lined up, the submission sequence starts with the staff demographic. Then we would recommend submitting the staff assignment, then the course section, then the student course section, and finally the post-secondary status. Pads will accept the files in any order, as you know. However, there are a dependency as far as the errors that trigger. So the most streamlined method, the easiest method is to submit them in this order. You want to establish your staff, right? Then so you have your staff demographic. These are the staff members that are employed. These are staff members that are serving the students in our LEA. Then the staff assignment says specifically what their job, their classification, and the FTE is. Once you have your staff submitted, you can submit the course section files. That's because you need the seed from the staff in the course. Then you could submit the student course section because you've established your course. And the only file that's not related to those four files is post-secondary status, because again, the post-secondary status is looking at students from the previous academic year. And then over here on the right, we have this little table identifying the SAS, the course, the student course section, and the PSTS. These are full replacement files. So they have a transaction processing method, which if you submit a record that matches an operational key, all other records in CalPEDS with that same operational key will be replaced. So if we just look at the SAS file, the SASS, the operational key is the school of assignment, the academic year. So if you have 5 schools and you have a single teacher at school A, all the data for school A in that academic year, because it's school of assignment and academic year, will be replaced if you try to submit a file for a single teacher. So if it's just a single or a handful of teachers, you might prefer to do online maintenance as to not impact the records for the rest of the school or the rest of the staff at a school. If you're going to be submitting files, submit complete files. Even if you're making one change, submit all the other unchanged record as well, and full replacement will not impair you. So you can see there's different operational keys for each file type. So the CalPad CFS Word document, which is on the system documentation page, identifies all the operational keys. So here are the file specifications. Excel document, this will tell you what's required in each field. It's the CFS we most often refer to, but the one that tells you the transactional processing methods and the operational keys is the Word document. The document extension or the docx file. So it's not used as frequently as the other version of the CFS, but it has its value.